Hello and welcome to Spotlight in Education. I'm Dr. Ann Magistro, Superintendent of the East Brunswick Public Schools. And I'm joined today by two of our supervisors, Mr. Robert Shamy, who's a Supervisor of Social Studies and Media, and Mr. Hank Stankewicz, Supervisor of Technical, Business, and Computer Education. And both of these gentlemen, along with their staff, have been working to enhance our 7th grade research project at Hammersholt Middle School. But before we begin talking about the 7th grade program, Bob, why don't you give our viewers an overview of our process, our research process through the years?
Well, actually, the research process begins at grade 3 and moves through grade 11. It begins in the 3rd and 4th grade with a research that involves researching animals in 3rd grade, and in 4th grade doing a project that focuses on national parks. And primarily that introduces the students to research skills. There are some technical skills that are involved, but its emphasis is in developing students' research skills. Beginning in grade 5, here's where we actually begin the formal research phase involving the infusion of technology into the process. The 5th grade is really the first big step toward using technology to elaborate the story of history, to develop presentation skills where the students are evaluated based on a scoring guide in terms of their presentation skills, the relevance of their research. They have to demonstrate that they are able to defend their research to a panel of judges. That's a theme that's carried from 5th grade through 11th grade, where at each phase the students are required to defend their research to a panel of judges. In 6th grade, where we begin our world history sequence, the students are researching an ancient civilization, and here again they have to use a technology like PowerPoint to elaborate their research. But here we begin to push the envelope a little in areas of critical thinking because they have to draw a parallel between something from the ancient world that they're researching to something in the modern world. And this is, you know, a compare and contrast kind of thing, and they have to defend their choice. I mean, why do you think this matches, for example, the Colosseum to some arena today? And they'll have to draw parallels and explain why they selected that parallel. In 7th grade, which is the focus of this presentation today, is where we really begin to use an interdisciplinary approach involving Hank's computer studies program and the social studies program, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. 8th, 9th, and 10th grade are a debate. All of the research is based in the content of the course, so that in 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, students select a topic, but they do it in a panel that either is pro or con a particular issue or legislation or a relevant issue like search and seizure, or depending on the content again. In 11th grade, which is the culminating research project, it's actually an oral defense, an individual defense of a thesis statement. Students select a thesis statement. They then do the research. They have to develop an abstract. And there's a 5 to 10 minute defense that they do before a judge. So it's a very rigorous process, and it really does, again, raise the bar on critical thinking.
It certainly sounds very well planned, you know, through the grades. But now let's talk specifically about the 7th grade program at Hammersholt. What was it before, and how did the research project change now?
I think it's been quite a dramatic change. Prior to this year, students selected a research topic shortly after winter break, or maybe before winter break, it depended on teacher's schedule. They then began the research. They developed also their PowerPoint presentation with the assistance of the media specialist. They then presented at the end of the year, basically. But the problem was that the topics that they were presenting on were topics that could have been studied in the class in September. So the relevance of what they were learning about or presenting was lost based on the fact that it might have been 6 months since they've really studied that project. What we decided to do, and Hank and I have been really working on this for a number of years now, was to try and get the teachers to have students present at the time that they're studying the content. And that was a difficult problem for us to analyze, and we'll talk a little bit about that again later. But what we were able to do was we were able to schedule the research phase to the 5 computer cycles at Hammersholt, so that while a student is studying the computer studies program, they're doing their research for social studies. It works really well. They begin their research in the social studies class. At that time, the computer studies teacher is teaching the technical skills, but then I'll let Hank elaborate on that interdisciplinary activity.
Share with us what goes on in your department.
Well, as part of the Hammersholt curriculum, students are cycled through a program that the East Brunswick, that we feel are very important for students' skills to learn. In the 6th grade, one of the things that the whole curriculum is built around introduction to the Microsoft Office suite, specifically word processing. And the way that we do that is students research several careers that they think they might like or might be interested in. And they use their word processing skills to format a resume and also a cover letter of introduction, to that particular career. In the 7th grade, we completely redesigned the curriculum, as Bob was mentioning before, to actually align with the social studies classes. What we did was, it's based around the Microsoft Office suite again, particularly word processing in the first few weeks of the class. Students learn how to format and use word processing skills to do their report. We then move on to PowerPoint, where students actually bring in multimedia clips, digital cameras. They use digital cameras, they use video, they use United Streaming, and actually build a PowerPoint presentation based on the research that Bob was talking about. It's point of contact research, and we thought, how would it best be for students to actually be working on something that they're actually working on in social studies and/or science or language arts, and have that be a real-world problem that they could solve.
Well, it certainly makes sense educationally. It must place a whole new significance on the project.
I think it really does. Whenever we can integrate curricula areas like social studies, language arts, and/or science, it gives students a whole new idea about how things work in the real world. We teach them how to use skills. We teach them skills that they can use in the real world. But if they don't understand how and when to use them and how it actually makes sense, it really doesn't make sense for them. And so by allowing us to changing this curriculum and working with Bob in social studies, they get that point of contact. They learn to use the skill, but also it makes sense to them and how it's used in the real world.
Explain to us now how the students, specifically in the computer studies class and the social studies classes, work to arrive at the presentation stage that they're working towards.
Well, you have 5 computer studies cycles. The first cycle runs approximately through October. In early September, those students in 7th grade who are in that first cycle are identified in the social studies classes. And they are in 5 possible social studies classes. So those students then are identified as a cohort or group of students who will be working together on the project. Now, the presentations are individual, but they collaborate in the initial research process. The teacher will structure group activities, and while the rest of the class may be working on a particular group activity, this group is working on the research presentation. So they're assisted for about 2 weeks. They select a topic, they begin their initial research, and at that point, the computer studies teacher has covered the rudiments of PowerPoint and begins to teach them how to apply the research that they're finding to the PowerPoint presentation. In other words, how to develop the multimedia presentation. So they use scanners, digital cameras, video cameras, voice overlays. And that's the challenge of multimedia. It combines the best elements of technology to complete a task. And technology is not the end product. The end product is to have students who are capable of seeing a task before them and being able to select the right technology to apply to accomplish the task. So that's going on for a period of about 5 weeks or so. Then at the point that the computer studies teacher feels that that the project is ready for presentation, the social studies teachers feel that the content and presentation skills are where they should be, they both sign off on the student project, and then the presentations begin in the social studies class. What we try and do is focus on the scoring guide. Again, is a fairly complex evaluation of the end product. There are scores that students can get for content, reasoning and critical thinking, presentation skills, and technical skills. In content, the students have to organize evidence, they have to use facts and details, and support their topic with facts and details. And they're evaluated based on that specific skill. In reasoning and critical thinking, they've got to clearly show how the topic is linked to something in the modern era, as I had mentioned earlier. And then at the end of it, they're questioned by the judges and by the fellow students. Again, here is this element of critical thinking, because you have to think on your feet. You've got to be able to answer questions. The presentation skills involve evaluation based on their ability to show poise and maintain a proper pace, to maintain eye contact, speak with expression, to have a clear opening and closing remarks. And then the technical skills are primarily evaluated by the computer studies teacher, and I'll let Hank talk more about that.
Okay, as far as the technical skills go, the state of New Jersey recently approved the new core curriculum content standards that are to be applied to all areas of the curriculum. Standard 8.1, Information Technology, outlines the manner by which all students will use technology skills and tools to gather information and solve problems. East Brunswick had advanced insight into these standards since we were on the committee that wrote them. The major areas are introduction and review of hardware, developing word processing skills, successful use of the internet for searches and downloading material, streaming video, and developing multimedia skills using PowerPoint. What you'll be seeing during this video segment is one of our computer studies classes in action during one of the early parts of the cycle. Over the course of approximately 7 weeks, Mrs. Kumar assesses what students actually know, then goes on to help them in understanding keyboarding and formatting, learning how to use digital cameras, learning how to use video cameras, scanners, and the rest, and using streaming video, bringing that into their PowerPoint presentation, and organizing this presentation into what Bob was mentioning before, their oral presentation.
All right, anybody heard of the word streaming video by any chance? That means it's a method of transmitting video over the internet in real time. There's no delay in it. It's a great technology, and it's really developing more and more as the time will go on, and it's really important. But if you want to incorporate a movie, that's the site you'll be going to, unitedstreaming.com. I'm going to help you find a topic that you might have chosen for your social studies project. Let's go to Insert. On the top menu bar, Insert. Go to Clip Art and see if you can find me something in the clip art that's given to you, or go onto the internet and find something.
Related to that little picture.
And then we save?
It's amazing that whenever we put a new initiative in place, our teachers work so hard to make sure that it works. Tell us a little bit about what the teachers and you have been doing to work towards this goal.
Okay, well, whenever Bob and we've been working on this for over 2 years. And The project began as an idea that, Bob and I sat down and said, we really need to start integrating, what happens in the curricular areas. And we wanted to make the projects real for students. We wanted to make them understand that things that happen in school really have an application to real world. And we set up workshops. Bob started in 2002 and 2003. And I'll let Bob tell you a little bit about his workshops.
Well, initially what our goal was, as I mentioned earlier, to try to make the research relevant to what they were studying at the time, not have all the content reviewed at the end of the year. And we also wanted to raise the bar on technology infusion. So I went and talked to Hank about how we could, in some way, because really you have to remember, in 5th and 6th grade, they use PowerPoint as a vehicle to elaborate their presentations. In 7th grade, they were doing the same thing. We felt that this was time to really require a higher skill set in technical applications. So in the first summer, we basically looked at relevance and how we could improve the technical applications. But I think things really came together in the summer of 2003. In the year 2002-2003 school year, Hank and I really worked at trying to figure out how we could put this thing together in an interdisciplinary approach. And we talked to Dr. Susko and the staff. The staff's been absolutely outstanding. They have gone way out for the students here in terms of extra time and putting themselves, dedicated themselves to this project and really wanting to make it work. We couldn't have done it without them. So in the summer of 2003, we really sat down with the computer studies teachers, a team of 7th grade social studies teachers, and we set the schedule for the first cycle, and we crossed our fingers and hoped that, in this huge school, that we'd be able to locate the students, that the teachers would be able to identify those students in their social studies classes, that the grouping of students would work. And there were some problems in the first cycle, and that's why in November of 2003, during the fall workshops, we again got this team together and we analyzed what the problems were, and we turned it over to the staff to try and make. One of the problems was that the student materials were a little bit too complicated, and so the staff rewrote a lot of the student materials to assist the students in getting through the process. And it really worked well. I have to say they did a remarkable job at making it much clearer for what was expected of the students. And we're now in almost the last cycle, and it's really been moving very nicely. And I'll let Hank talk a little bit more about the computer studies program and how it worked its self out.
Well, as part of that, I also designed several workshops that were held over the summer, and we completely redesigned the 6th and 7th grade curriculum, based on the findings that Bob's teachers found when doing their workshops. We then had a combined workshop where his teachers and the computer studies teachers met, and I'm extremely proud of the teachers because, as Bob mentioned, they worked, they rolled up their sleeves, they worked together. There were some problems, but they sat down. No one, complained. They just fixed it. And after that first cycle, things just got better and better and better. One of the things that we did notice when we had this second combined meeting, we actually had a meeting that you'll possibly see as part of the video segment, where the teachers, Bob and I, got together and we discussed some of the problems that we had. And one of the interesting things that came up was that for the second cycle, the teachers noticed that students were actually more at ease in making their presentations. And we were trying to figure out why that was, and we finally did. One of the reasons was that in the art department, one of the first cycles was their drama. And so students were learning drama skills, and that helped them actually in their presentation. Mm-hmm.
Very good. Now let's look at the result of all this work, and let's have share with our viewing audience the student presentations.
The ancient Japanese were one of the most advanced armies of their time. Today I will be comparing them to the most advanced armies of our time. The topics of the ancient Japanese that I have chosen to research about are armor and weapons, the samurai, and the crossbow. The katana, or steel longsword, was the most important weapon in the ancient Japanese army. Some other weapons included the 68-centimeter long wakizashi, or short sword, the kama, or scythe, the tanto, or dagger, and the shuriken, or throwing star dagger. The Japanese armor consisted of leather skirt and shirt, plated with iron or steel armor. The topics of the modern army I have chosen to research about are the M4 carbine, special forces, and armor. The M4 carbine has its roots in World War II when the U.S. Army adopted the M1 Garand. The M4A1 is mainly used among special forces and some of the primary infantry. In conclusion, I would like to compare ancient and modern Japanese weapons. Both use the system and armor and use range and hand-to-hand weapons, but the topics are completely different in the fact that the moderns use soft armor to stop bullets, and they use ranged weapons more often. The ancient armor was made of hard metal, and they fought mainly at hand-to-hand. These are the topics, the sites, and books that I found useful in researching my topic.
Hi, I'm Ryan Holland, and I'm doing my report on the Ottoman government versus today's modern American government. During the Ottoman section of my speech, you will learn about Topkapi Palace, the Palace School, and the Sultan's role in the government. Topkapi Palace. In 1453, Sultan Mehmed II took over Constantinople. He decided to build a luxurious palace for the future sultans to live in. The palace was filled with luxurious domes, turrets, and chimneys, but the most secluded areas, which were the inner palace and the harem, were reserved solely for the sultan and his family. The other buildings were for the other government officials. During the American government section of my speech, you guys will learn about the president's role, the people's role, and the government structure of America. Since I'm talking to you about America, I've got a movie of the American flag.
That's our freedoms. One of the early American flags had 13 stars and stripes that represented the 13 colonies. Since then, a new star has been added for each new state. Today, the American flag has 50 stars that represent the 50 states. The original colonies are still remembered by the red and white stripes. People carry the flag or fly it to show their patriotism and support of America.
Well, this is really quite a process. Let's summarize how the process benefits our students, our 7th grade students in particular.
Okay. One of the very positive effects of the educational system in East Brunswick is that we're always on the cutting edge or bleeding edge of innovating things to meet students' needs. And in this instance, we were already delivering a program that the State Department was just working on. So they were developing standards for all school districts in the state to follow, and we were already doing it. And it's just nice, to work in East Brunswick where all of the supervisors and all the administrative staff are always looking for new ways for students to make connections, to the real world. And, Bob will give you some information as well.
Well, it's interesting. I attended a workshop, a technical workshop a while back, and one of the speakers said that in the world of technology, we are the immigrants. Us adults are the immigrants, and the students are the natives. I mean, they're in a world where technology is turning over every 18 months. So that one goal in itself is we're taking 7th grade students and we're getting them to utilize almost every aspect of multimedia technology that's out there in a creative production, which raises the bar on critical thinking. I mean, multimedia, you give the student a task, and the student has to think creatively about how he can elaborate what he's telling the class using any number of technical applications. the other benefits include what I had mentioned earlier, the fact that we're making history interesting and relevant. We're working on presentation skills as well as technical skills, because the students have to stand up there and present. So it's many aspects are very productive here, including, I think, one of the most important is their ability to work in groups, because this is a cooperative effort initially, and that's a skill that is not only part of the state standards, but something that we need to teach students how to do, is to share and work cooperatively.
Well, it's obvious that there are lifelong skills being taught throughout this process. Are there some ways that our parents who are watching at home can support their students along with their projects?
Well, I think the best thing they can do is take an interest in the project development and support the teacher's efforts by checking the child's progress and emphasizing quality. But also, I think that the parent has to know when to step back. I know that when it comes to projects, many parents are so interested in their students' grades that they'll do a lot of the work for the student. That's not a good thing. This is a creative effort, and we develop creativity in students by challenging them to think creatively. So I think that it's fine for the parent to be interested and take a role in assisting their child as much as they can, but not in the area, asking the right questions to elicit creative products, that kind of thing. I think that's where the parent can really play a very important role.
I believe that parents should ask their children daily what they're doing in school, and be involved in it, just as Bob said. I don't believe that the parents ought to do the project for the student or for their child, but that they should be interested and take every chance that they can to tie their own career or the things that they do in their own life using technology, and allow students to kind of get an idea that what we're teaching them and what they're learning in the 7th grade, or any grade level for that matter, will help them when they leave school. These are real-world skills that we're teaching them, and the more that the parents can share with them what kind of skills they use in the real world, I think the more students will be able to make that connection.
This is yet another example of how our educators don't just stick with status quo. It just seems that any program that we have here in East Brunswick, our administrators, our teachers work very hard to just make them better, always working to make it, even better than it is. And I want to thank both of you for the time and effort that you put in these programs, and please share with your staff how pleased we all are with the outcome of this project that the two of you have been working with them on. And I appreciate that. And thank you for watching Spotlight in Education.